TG Geeks, episode 274, May 18th, 2020. Sci-Fi and the Great Pause. Hello and welcome to another webcast from tggeeks.com, where Ben and Keith, the two gay geeks, talk about all aspects of geekdom and nerdery, sci-fi, comics, film, horror, genre. You name it, we talk about it. I'm Keith Lane, and we're coming to you from TG Squared Studios in lovely Phoenix, Arizona, where we're still inside and it's hotter than heck outside.
And I am Ben Raggington, coming to you from our own little biosphere. You'll get that in a bit. Here in Phoenix, Arizona.
Well, let's get on with it.
Prepare for hyperdrive.
Meanwhile, in the Hall of Episodes, the two gay geeks are discussing this.
Well, in this episode, we are going to talk to J. Scott Coatsworth, who is an author, and he is also the progenitor of the Great Pause.
His term,
as we call it. And also, he's going to talk to us about things that he's got going on in conjunction or that have been precipitated by the Great Pause. Several new and interesting things. Have our birthday shout-outs, our featured podcast of the week, everybody's favorite feedback, and shout-outs. In our second segment, we have a couple of things we'll talk about, and then I have a weekly recap and the regular follow-up shout-outs on everything. So let's get right into it. And this time we welcome back to the show Mr. J. Scott Coatsworth, author and writer extraordinaire of some really wonderful stuff.
Something of an entrepreneur as well.
Yes, as well. So welcome back to the show, Scott.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me. My grandfather, when I used to say that to him, I'd say, "Thanks for having me over to his house," and he'd say, "Well, Scott, do you feel like you've been had?"
Exactly.
So every time somebody says that now, Mark and I turn to each other when we say that.
Yeah. Of course, it's always nice to be had.
So one of our guests just recently said that. He says, "Thank you for having me." And I said, "Thank you for allowing yourself to be had." Yeah, exactly.
There we go. All right.
I thought you guys said the show wasn't dirty.
Yeah. So for the folks,
we have derailed already.
I got tickled for a moment.
That was fast.
Yeah, it was quick. That was a quickie. Anyway, let's stop before we get any further in the toilet.
I'm thinking George Hamilton, never a quickie, always a longie.
Yes. All right.
Pick up train, put back on track.
Exactly. So, for those that have not listened to one of the previous interviews that we have done with you,
which
Scott,
were far more controlled than this one already.
Yes. Tell our listeners who you are, how you kind of got into writing, and all of that kind of neat stuff. The Reader's Digest
elevator pitch
form of your life to this point.
Elevator pitch. Wanted to write, did, done.
There you go.
Wow. Should be running our closing credits now.
Exactly.
There you go. No, I wanted to be a writer since I was in elementary school, and when I first started Lord of the Rings in third grade, and just was fascinated by these stories. And I started in my 20s and tried it and put a book out to the publishers, and it got returned by all these big publishers, and I just kind of shut down. And I started again in my 40s and stuck with it, and ended up getting my in with some romance publishers, but my heart was always more in sci-fi and fantasy. And so I've kind of gradually been moving from doing sci-fi, fantasy, magic realism, influenced romance over into doing diverse sci-fi and fantasy. And that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm kind of striking out on my own and trying to really make a name for myself in that field.
Yeah, and I've read a number of your books. Your sci-fi and fantasy is really, really very fantastical and very.
It's fat too, yeah.
Yeah. No, I do like your work a lot. I like the way you write and the points of view that you pick up in the sci-fi and the fantasy worlds. So that is where we are at the moment. So what is it that you have to talk to us about today? You have some new things, some irons in the fire, if you will, and something that has been released recently and all of that. Sure. So tell us what you got going.
So last year I started a campaign to get into SFWA, the Science Fiction Fantasy Writers of America. And the one way you do that is you get some stories published at, I think it was 8 cents, now it's 9 cents a word in one of the sci-fi magazines. And so I wrote a number of short stories, and one of them, Chinatown, I wrote and sent out, and it's kind of like that old, the pachinko machines. Do you guys ever have one of those?
Yes, I do.
My grandpa had one of those. He used to play whenever I went to his house. A little ball goes all the way down, and it's like it works. The stories kind of work their way through all the different magazines, and sometimes this one's open and that one's closed, and this one takes sci-fi and that takes fantasy, and this one is 1,000 words or more, and this one is 10,000 or less. So you kind of work your stories through the whole little grid, and this one came back to me. And there were a couple other magazines I'd considered sending it to, but both are currently closed to submissions, and who knows when they'll open. So I decided to go ahead and put this story out there myself. And yeah, it came out about 2 weeks ago. It's something, it kind of goes along with some of my other stories. It's sort of a post-apocalyptic or kind of deconstructed version of the United States. China has taken over, and we're deep into climate change. And it features a bi character, but there's not a whole lot of. It's more implied diversity than actually kind of built into the story itself. If you know what I mean?
Right. Okay. So you have to give up your gay writer card now.
Yeah, let me go get it. I think it's in my wallet.
There you go. Burning that card.
My goal with this story was, well, there was a couple of things. First of all, I wanted to take Chinatown, which in a lot of cases is a much older district and city, especially in San Francisco where this is set. Right. And it's kind of not known as the modern high-tech place. But China really is these days. And so I kind of wanted to flip that idea of Chinatown on its head and make it kind of the most advanced place in San Francisco at its time. But I also wanted to see if I could write a short story and really pack it with the kind of world building that I get into my novels. Right. And so it really, when you read it, I'm hoping that you get a whole feel for the world in a very short, I think it's 22, 23 pages of reading. So you really feel like you are immersed in this world in that short period of time.
Okay, if it's only 22 pages, I guess I can put this other book down. I didn't even look at it.
Now who's not helping themselves?
Exactly. Sorry about that.
I do have a question, though. Because
I bought it the day it came out, and then it was just like, I wanted to do that for you, but, didn't have room to read it yet.
I do have a question, because you hit on something as you were describing it, and this is something that's always kind of been puzzling towards me, and that is there's this fascination among writers to go and do stories that are post-apocalyptic. I'm all about optimism. I like to see, bright futures and, talk about hope and all of that. And yet when I start looking at a lot of these books and see how they're just really set in this very dystopian kind of atmosphere, what is the appeal? Especially as a writer, what is it that turns you on about doing post-apocalyptic dystopian stories?
Well, let me say his are not dystopian. They're post-apocalyptic, and most of his stories have a very positive outlook on the future. I mean,
yeah, it's kind of
to a certain extent.
Right about that.
Yeah,
it's kind of like we've gone through the ringer, and I feel like we're kind of heading toward it right now in a lot of ways. And the idea is that yes, what comes after is not going to be what was before, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to be as good or better at some point. So with Chinatown, yes, there have been some horrible things that happened. The United States has basically fallen apart as a country. And yet, somehow, between what has happened and where things are at, we have started to get a handle on climate change and started to turn it back. And yet, although at the start of the story, and not to give away too many spoilers, but the remaining Americans are oppressed by the Chinese that have come in and taken over the country, that's not where things end up going. And so it's kind of like a lot of my stories are resets.
Right.
Looking at where we're at and like jumping into the future and saying, yes, it's not going to be the same as it is, and it's not going to be just the same as it is and better. And yet there is hope, and yet there is new, and yet there is change.
Right.
And so that's, I really don't, I mean, I used to, when I was in high school, I used to have this phase like going through and reading all these, I think The Day After, and there were a couple other ones that were post-apocalyptic, really like after nuclear war. And what fascinated me about those was not the destruction of the apocalypse, but it was the colonization and rebuilding after. And so I've always been drawn to that kind of idea of organizing and rebuilding and recreating and making new. And that's, I think, where the stories come from.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. And I enjoyed, obviously the one series and then the post series to that, without naming names here, the most the most recent book, and I thought it was fascinating where both of those stories went, and the very positive nature, even though you had to slog through all the awful stuff to get there, especially.
You're talking about Drop Knots, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So that's one. It's out with agents right now. I'm hoping to pick up an agent and get to a bigger publisher, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it is. That takes the idea of humanity's down to a small remnant, and yet there's hope, and yet there's growth, and yet there's new.
Right.
And so it really they're set in different realities, but they share that kind of DNA.
Yeah. So that is your writing, and have you got anything that you're working on currently that you want to talk about?
Writing wise, or
writing? Yeah.
Yeah. So I have 3 stories that are out for submission to the magazines, and then one of them is another kind of hopeful set in Italy that I was watching TV and they were showing during the coronavirus how everything was shut down in Venice and the streets were empty. And so my mind jumped to this time 50 years in the future when Venice has been basically sunk into the lagoon, and the people at that time rise it up and bring it back up.
Oh, cool.
And so, yeah, so that's again the same kind of vein. But my main thing right now is I don't know if you read The Last Run.
Yes.
Okay, so that Thoracis is the world for that one. It's again a different universe than my kind of mainline trilogies, but I've just finished a short story in that world that's out for submission, and then I'm writing a new trilogy that's going to be in that world.
Ooh.
And the idea of that world is it's a world that's been colonized in a universe where it's not possible to do hyperspace or super fast travel. And in The Last Run, it was referring to the last ship that came from Earth with supplies before Earth fell apart. So again, I'm destroying the Earth. Sorry,
but you're building a new place.
It's almost kind of a fantasy story in that it's sort of a medieval feeling world,
right?
But the backstory is that something is changing, and while this something is changing, the world's own flora and fauna is reacting to it and drawing the humans that are in it into it. And there's a lot of symbiosis in the story, a lot of connection between the different creatures, and then eventually, hopefully, between them and the humans. So it's been a little bit different story to write, but I'm about 3 chapters in. It's so far it's going really well, and it's fascinating me where it might go.
Oh, cool.
You touched on a little bit about where your stories come from, like the story that you had regarding Venice. Is that kind of how, is that the genesis of pretty much everything you write? You observe something and then you just get this spark like, ooh, what if?
Yeah, it really varies. So for The Last Run, a friend of mine was talking to me and said, well, what if it's not possible to travel between worlds in hyperspace? And the only way to get there is the long run, the long way.
Colony
ships.
And
that triggered that story. What's that?
Colony ships.
Yeah, generation ships, et cetera, or even just regular ships that take a long time to get back and forth between. So that was the genesis for that. But then when I was writing that story, this woman was in this field, and there were these plants, and then these plants were somehow talking to her, and then they became sentient, and then that built into a part of the world. So that then led into the whole idea about the symbionts. So sometimes it's just kind of it just builds on itself. Like I'll see something and then I'll go back and read it. Sometimes I have in the Stark Divide and the Liminal Sky series, when I wrote that first story in my 20s and sent it off to the publishers, it was kind of a midpoint in between that series and the what's become the Oberon cycle. And that story will eventually be told. I haven't done it yet again. But in that story, I referred to a guy named Davian the Betrayer. And it was just a throwaway line talking about something that happened in the past, and I wasn't really clear on it. But when I went back to write the prequel to the earlier stories, that character came into it, and he became a person and a character and a plot line and a story. And so something that was just a throwaway 25 years ago when I wrote that thing, or 20 years ago, whatever that was, all of a sudden was an entire book.
So it's
really, the writer brain is weird.
Well, yeah, that's why I love talking to writers, because there's so many unusual elements that come into play. So, and I know that I've brought this question up with you, and I'm going to kind of take a different tack with it. Did that character all of a sudden start kind of speaking to you out of the back of your brain, saying, "Hey, I'm still here. Remember, you made a mention of me." Something along those lines, or was this something that you just kind of deliberately planned as you went into it?
No, I knew that it was one of the pieces. When I went back and kind of looked at the story, I knew it was one of the few things I'd actually talked about earlier in time in the timeline. So because of that, I knew I wanted to address it. I wanted to have it in there. So he just kind of sort of came back to me, and it was like the right time to fit him in. And I'm like, ooh, I could get him in here, and he's going to be bad. And I'm not sure exactly how he's going to be bad. I know he's going to betray people because he's Davian the Betrayer. But I don't really know much beyond that he, a lot of people got hurt because of him. So I didn't know how that was going to plan out. I just put him in place in the end of the first book, and then he became the driving force in the second book. So it was kind of, it just kind of built on itself.
Yeah. Well, I do want to throw something out here that, we talked about previously that you grew up in the Tucson area, and your Liminal Sky series basically is a biosphere, and you grew up right there around the corner from it. Even though you say you haven't gone there, it's interesting how that kind of comes into play.
The biosphere became such an element in American culture. I mean, even people who didn't live anywhere near Arizona were familiar with it. So it's no wonder that it would have an impact on you in some way.
Well, okay, so when I was just out of high school, they were talking about this project and they were planning it. And I so wanted to be in there. Like, I heard about it, and I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to be one of these biospherians and be part of this project. And I never did figure out how to make that happen, but that was such a dream of mine. Just this whole idea of, maybe I'm not going to actually be an astronaut, but this is a way I could be part of this whole idea. And I never actually went to see it until about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, when I was back visiting my mom with Mark, and we took a tour and went through it. But yeah, it was such a dream of mine to be a part of that.
Yeah.
It's funny you should say that.
And then you wrote about it. you literally created a whole trilogy about it. Yeah, so it's fascinating.
Exactly.
So,
yes,
go ahead.
I was going to say, I do have a couple of things that are not me writing related, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I can throw out there.
Sure.
So one of the things I wanted to talk to you guys about 2 months ago, one of our writers in Queer Sci Fi came to us and said, what do you guys think about doing a virtual con? Because we don't really have the ability right now to go to conventions. And I think at that point, they were still kind of reformulating like the Nebula Con, if that was going to happen virtually, and some of the other things. So we said yes. There were about 6 authors that said, I'd like to be involved in that. And so we've been putting this thing together that's going to happen on June 21st and 22nd, Saturday, Sunday. It's a free to everybody event, and it's called Rainbow Space Magic, because it really is kind of queer sci-fi, fantasy, paranormal, and to some extent horror. And so I wanted to let your listeners know about that coming up. It's rainbowspacemagic.org. And if folks want to go to that, it's going to be 2 days of panels, about, I think, 4 panels, 48 panels a day. And then it's going to be readings in between on Facebook Live. So it'll be split between Zoom and Facebook Live.
Far out. Wow, that's quite an undertaking there.
And I was going to say, kind of planning it out bit by bit.
with obviously the social changes that we've had to make because of COVID-19.
The great pause.
The great pause, as you coined it, which I love. That is the greatest term I've ever heard. I love calling it the great pause. Do you see this as possibly being a wave of the future, not necessarily to replace conventions and festivals and such, but do you see that as maybe becoming like add-ons to
a supplement? Yeah,
as a supplement to, like, when San Diego Comic-Con finally can come back and people can attend. Do you think this might be something that they can build on and supplement the current physical conventions?
I do, actually. It's funny you should ask that, because I was just in the annual SFWA meeting today, Science Fiction Fantasy Writers of America. For the first time, they did their meeting online, and so anybody could attend it. Usually it's held at NebulaCon, and you can go, if you go to the con, you can go to it. There were about 110 people there, and one of the things they talked about was how, in their case, they've actually built a website and built in all the functionality in the site to have these different parts of a con, including being able to kind of hang out with people and things beyond just the standard kind of Zoom meetings and things. And one of the points they made was that this is something that they can use going forward during the rest of the year. So if they can hold various kinds of events and meetings in this site, and they can use it to supplement things going forward. So, if you want to go to NebulaCon next year, but you can't afford the airfare and you can't afford the hotel and everything, you'll still be able to attend in this way. So cool. I think, like everything else, we're going to come out of this and we're going to find that so many things have changed, and a lot of our habits that we learned during this great pause, will continue on, not necessarily replacing things. I mean, ebooks didn't replace books, right?
Mm-hmm.
And DVDs didn't replace going to the movies.
You mean I'm going to have to cook all the time?
What's that?
You mean I'm going to have to cook all the time?
Probably. No, it's going to be a different world. I mean, we are learning new things, and
exactly.
There have been a few videos that have gone around that have kind of shown possibilities of what we might do with this pause, and this reflection and where we might come out of it. I don't know. I'm hopeful. I'm also scared. So we'll see.
Well,
where things go.
An awful lot of isolation in this, and how are people going to deal with that? I mean, obviously the introverts are really it's
sure.
No change.
No, I feel fine, because that's me. I mean, I'm a complete recluse, so it's no big deal to me. But at the same time, and you pointed this out, people, like NebulaCon, people who can't attend it, or San Diego Comic-Con. I mean, my goodness, that's a thing that sells out in a day. And they have some of the best panels out there. And the idea of being able to supplement a live event where people can actually physically attend with some sort of a virtual gathering, I think is a splendid idea. And it creates a greater sense of accessibility to people and ideas. So I think this is a wonderful thing that you're looking at here.
Spawn new technologies and
I agree.
ways of doing things.
This is our first one. Yeah, this is our first one where, if it goes well, we'll do it again next year. But there's no plans to make this one I shouldn't say a physical event. Although, who knows? It's Olivia Helling's baby, so I don't want to take too much away from her on it. She's the one that kind of pulled it all together. So, but we'll see how it goes this year.
Well, that could be really fascinating. I certainly want to stay in the loop on that and publicize that as much as we can.
Yeah, so rainbowspacemagic.org. And then the other thing I wanted to tell you guys about, we are just launched, actually today was the soft launch for it, a new website called limfic.com, which is a liminal fiction. So it's limfic.com. And if any of your folks are familiar with our QueeRomance Ink site, it's a directory of queer romance books. Limfic is aiming to do that for the sci-fi market. Basically bring together bunches of authors, especially the smaller authors who may be hybrid authors or independently published, and to bring their books together in one place and also start to create a real community of folks. We've been building the Facebook group on that for about 2 years now, and we've got about 1,100 writers and readers that are part of the group. One of the things that I found in moving out of the MM and romance space and into the sci-fi space is there is a community. There's SFWA and there's cons and things, but there's also seem to be a lot of walls and barriers between parts of the community. And we really wanted to make a place where people who write romance sci-fi and people who write hard sci-fi and people who write steampunk and everything else could come together with folks that do horror and folks that do paranormal and Omegaverse, MPreg stuff, and have one kind of overarching community that then will work with a website to kind of create a new space that I don't think really exists at this time in
Right.
the sci-fi side.
Well, not in a big community. I mean, there are a lot of tiny pockets that are definitely out there.
Yes.
But I think those are more author-driven. Little like I know that Katie Edwards has got his own little clique. And Gail Martin, a.k.a. Morgan Bryce, she's got her own little clique, and they've developed their own little cyber-type communities that are there. It would be nice to see things that are really kind of brought in under a much larger umbrella, because I think seeing all these little tiny pockets is definitely an indication that there is an audience out there for this kind of material. But you become so isolated into one little particular group that you become completely unaware that there is such a bigger world out there.
Oh, yeah. One-stop shop, and you can pick and choose from different things and discover something new.
I mean, I can't even rely on Amazon for that.
Yeah.
Because Amazon reads my habits and starts giving me just the same thing. It's like, okay, I kind of want to broaden my horizons a bit.
Well, it's also supposed to be super searchable, so you can filter out if you want to go down to real trope level detail or types of characters or combine different things. And so you can find things if you have a particular reading interest or something that maybe this month you're really into reading, lesbian books set on Mars. Or you want to read,
wow,
space pirates.
That is so specific.
You can drill down to that. Yeah, you can find the thing you're looking for. I think I was really blessed in the queer romance and LGBTQ romance market, because there were a number of websites that were community sites that were driven by usually one or two individuals who just really had a passion for it, and created blogger sites, review sites. That kind of thing. And again, those things sort of exist on the sci-fi side, but when I've been trying to set up blog tours for my own books and get outside of the romance market, it's been really hard to find places to land that will help get the word out about the books. So again, just trying to kind of spark something new and some community, and it's kind of my thing, is being a community builder. So trying to build a new community in this space.
Cool.
Well, this is fantastic. And as always, we're running out of time. And it's a shame, because I think that there's potential for so much more conversation here. And unfortunately, there isn't the time for it. So in the meantime, if people want to learn more about you and everything that you got going on, I know you've got some presence on the intertubes with websites and social media. Could you share some of that with us?
And the Twitters and the Facebooks.
And the Facebooks and the MySpaces and the Instagrams, yeah.
You notice we said the Twitters.
All the places. Well, first I want to say thank you for letting me be the first or announce this first on your site. So this is the first.
Hey, we're happy.
Podcast.
Very happy to be the one.
So my main home online is my website. That's J. Scott Coatsworth, just like it sounds, Coates and then Worth.com. And if you go there and sign up for my mailing list, you'll get an anthology, or actually it's a collection since it's all mine, of 8 stories of mine for free, and kind of get a sample of what I do. But you can find me on Facebook, you can find me on Instagram, and you can find me on Twitter, all J. Scott Coatsworth. And then, of course, I also run the Limfic site, QueerSci-Fi.com, if you're interested in queer science fiction, fantasy, paranormal, and horror. And, of course, the one we just talked about, the QueeRomance Ink.com.
Cool.
Fantastic.
This has been absolutely wonderful. Thanks for being on the show again.
Yeah, it's been awesome. I love talking to you guys.
Hey, it's America's sweetheart, Brian Augustine, comic legend and bon vivant, and you're listening to The Two Gay Geeks.
Well, it's always fascinating talking to Scott. He's always got a million things going on.
He does, and I loved what he had to share in terms of this virtual convention that he's got.
Yeah.
That he was referring to. I think that's a fascinating idea.
And the community.
The community in general. And I think in spite of everything that's going on, and this is something we touched about a few times throughout the conversation, I think it could lay the groundwork for some very interesting things in the future.
Absolutely. And here's a few selected birthdays for May 18th through May 24th, 2020. May 18th. Where? I've got some missing. Oh, that's supposed to be Frank Capra.
Frank Capra for May 18th.
May 18th, Frank Capra. Director, It's a Wonderful Life, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. And then we have Andreas Katsulas, actor, most known for Jakar on Babylon 5 and Tomalak on Next Generation.
Who then became the same character at the very end of Next Generation. It's hilarious to watch.
Exactly. And also in the movie Someone to Watch Over Me.
Oh, yeah.
And on the DVD extras for Babylon 5, the cast stated how great Andreas was to work with, and he was just the nicest.
Everybody loved him.
Nicest guy. However, if you had something to discuss with him, you should do it before makeup. Otherwise,
forget it. You're going to get Jakar.
You're going to get Jakar once he was in costume.
He was a real method actor.
Yes,
in some ways, I mean, I've seen interviews with him where he said the moment he puts on that makeup, he ceases to be Andres, and he says he is immediately this other character. So that does not surprise me. Although I understand there are some. Straczynski said there was something very warped about driving around the backlot where B5 was filmed. You're going along, and all of a sudden you might see Jakar studying his script, smoking a cigarette.
Exactly.
I mean, how weird is that?
Yeah. And then we have Miriam Margolyes, actress.
Madam Sprout, Professor Sprout.
Professor Pomona Sprout.
Oh, you got the first name.
I did, yes.
I'm impressed.
She was offered the role of Dr. Laird in Resurrection of the Daleks.
Really?
Yes. But she turned it down. She was also a lifelong friend of Mary Tam.
Ah.
Rick Wakeman, musician of Yes.
Keyboardist extraordinaire.
Yes. Mark Mothersbaugh, musician, composer of Devo. He composed Lego Movie soundtrack, Thor Ragnarok.
Oh, hang on. I didn't realize he was of Devo fame.
Yes, Mark Mothersbaugh.
No kidding.
Yeah, of Devo.
Oh, I was never a big fan. I mean, I understood Devo, but I was not a devotee like I am for, I would say Yes or Kansas.
Aha.
So I had no idea.
Yeah, and he frequently hires his bandmates for his film scores.
Okay, I didn't know that either.
And then we have Matthew Brady, photographer. He was one of the first American photographers using the daguerreotype technique that was discovered or came from France, and then he set up a studio in New York City in 1844. He photographed Edgar Allan Poe, John Quincy Adams, and Abraham Lincoln, and he brought home the reality of war to the public by his photographs of the Civil War. He is just amazing, the things that he did, early photographer. And then we have May 19th, Andre the Giant, wrestler, actor, Princess Bride. He was in The $6 Million Man, too.
That's right. He played
Bigfoot.
Sasquatch.
Yes. He was 7'4" and was an avid card player and wine collector.
Of course.
And also
another giant.
Yes, also on May 19th, Peter Mayhew, another giant actor.
Who played a Wookiee.
Yes, and before he took on the part of Chewbacca, he was an orderly at King's College Hospital. Mm-hmm. And then we have Trevor Peacock, actor, Jim, Trot, in The Vicar of Dibley, and he played Old Joe, the rag and bow man, in 2 versions of The Christmas Carol. And he actually wrote the words to the song, Mrs. Brown, You've Got a Lovely Daughter, which was recorded by Herman and the Hermits.
Oh, no kidding.
And it didn't have any, no.
No, yes.
And then we have Gary Kildall, computer programmer, inventor of CP/M, and recognized that microprocessors were the wave of the future, founded Digital Research Incorporated, and was really kind of that, kind of pushed CP/M as the newest or the best programming language and operating system. And IBM picked that up originally and tried to sell machines with CP/M, but DOS went out.
Oh, well.
So anyway, and then we have a Facebook friend, Craig Batcher. May 20th, Mindy Cohn, actress, Facts of Life. She was the voice of Velma Dinkley in much of the Scooby-Doo TV incarnations.
I can hear that in my head, yeah.
And she was also in a film that we saw at Horrible Imaginings.
Yes.
You're Killing Me, directed by Jim Henson. And then we have, let's see, Dolly Madison, famous cake maker, wife of James Madison. She was interesting that she brought bipartisanship to Washington by hosting social gatherings for Both Sides. And a daguerreotype of her was made in 1848 by Matthew Brady.
Well, how about that?
Yeah, interesting, huh? What happened to my sound here?
I don't know.
It quit. Interesting. Oh well. Something's wrong with my sound. Something's wrong with all of my sounds, apparently.
You have a bad connection. There you go.
I'll just not touch it.
Yeah. Don't even look at it.
Yes. But actually, I said she was a famous cake maker. I guess that's incorrect. Her name is spelled Dolly with an E.
I was going to leave it alone.
Oh, you should have said something. I was waiting for that.
Ah, you were baiting
Dang it,
me.
I was baiting you, yes. And then we have Ted Allen.
Who likes to eat cakes.
Yes.
Among other things.
He was in the original Queer Eye for the Straight Guy and host of Chopped. He's been with his partner Barry Rice since 1993.
Oh, bless him.
Then we have, actually, I missed somebody in here. Anthony Zerbe, actor, a ton of TV. If it was a TV Western, he was in it.
And he was always kind of the smarmy, not really the heavy, but he was never really a likable character.
Exactly. He was also Admiral Dougherty in Insurrection.
That's right.
And he and his sister-in-law have both played Star Trek villains.
Oh, really?
Salome Jens was the female changeling.
She's the leader of the Founders.
Exactly.
I didn't know they were related through marriage.
Exactly.
Far out.
And then David Hedison, actor. He was in The Fly.
At the time, he was known as Al Hedison, but yes he was David Hedison.
Felix Leiter in Live and Let Die and License to Kill. So he was the only actor to play
Felix twice?
Well, to play Felix in 2 non-consecutive Bond films.
And he also was the co-star for the Irwin Allen disaster. Well, it's not a disaster series, but it was the sci-fi Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea.
Yes, he was Captain Crane. And then Walter Isaacson, who wrote autobiography of Benjamin Franklin, which is it's a tome, but I'm telling you, it is a great, great book. If you're interested in the Founding Fathers and Benjamin Franklin in particular, pick up Walter Isaacson's book. May 21st, Richard Hatch, not to be confused.
Which one?
Not to be confused with the reality TV star.
We're talking the actor.
But the actor in Cattle Car Galactica or Battlestar Galactica, in all of its incarnations, as well as several of the books. He wrote several books.
He did write several books. I know that he was trying to actually revive the series with him as Apollo. So that would have been interesting. But more recently, he actually appeared as a Klingon warlord in Prelude to Axanar.
Yeah, that was just before he died.
Yeah, it was short before he died. I think he actually filmed 1 or 2 scenes, but I don't know if those are going to be. I don't know if they're usable or not, because that was before the judgment came down regarding Star Trek property. So I don't know if they'll get to use that or not. Hopefully they will, because he did film a few things for what was supposed to be the Axanar feature film.
Yeah. And then we have Raymond Burr, actor, Godzilla, King of the Monsters.
Oh, my God. What a waste.
As well as Godzilla 1985.
What a waste.
He played Ironside and Perry Mason. He and his partner of over 35 years started the Sea Goddess Nurseries to grow orchids. They added almost 1,500 varieties.
Oh, wow.
They had places in Fiji and several of the places where orchids grow naturally. Mm-hmm. And they also started a vineyard in 1990 and released the first vintage just after his death, or a couple of years after his death. Just before he died, he threw several parties to say farewell to his friends. So, kind of interesting. He knew he was dying. He had, I think, kidney cancer.
Oh, shame.
And then we have Facebook friend Bob Nelson. May 22nd, Bernie Taupin. Well, and also, no. He was the lyricist for...
wrong Bernie.
Yes, for Elton John. And then we have Laurence Olivier, actor, Wuthering Heights, Spartacus. Richard III.
Right.
He played Richard III.
Yeah. How many encores?
How many curtain calls did he have?
Look at him now. Look at him.
He's dead. Although he was knighted, he refused to speak to anyone who didn't call him Larry.
I'm not surprised. He did have a nice little a posthumous appearance in Captain Sky in the World of Tomorrow.
Captain, what was that? Yeah, Captain Skyfall or something. Anyway.
Captain Sky in the World of Tomorrow.
Yeah, okay. And then we have Richard Wagner, composer, Ring Cycle, Parsifal, The Flying Dutchman, which we missed, and as well as many other things. And then we have Harvey Milk, gay political activist, owned camera shop in the Castro, first gay politician in the state of California, first elected gay politician, and city council member, and was sadly murdered after 7 months in office, something like
but he made some wonderfully positive waves.
Yes, he did.
And what his contributions certainly paved the way for future gay rights.
Exactly.
I mean, his contribution is invaluable.
Yep. And then we have Hergé, who was the cartoonist, creator of Tintin. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, writer, Sherlock Holmes. And then we have Facebook friend Janine Berryman, Victoria Blunt, Nikki Hunter, and my grandmother, Verna Mae Lane. She would have been 108 or 9,
wow,
something now. Yeah, if she had lived. May 23rd, Joan Collins, actress, played Edith Keeler, Sitting on the Edge of Forever. Alexis Colby. Her first husband, Maxwell Reed,
yes,
tried to sell her to an Arab sheik for $10,000 just 7 months after they were married. Yes.
Is it any wonder she ended up in nighttime soaps?
Exactly.
My God, her life is a nighttime soap.
It is. And then we have Rosemary Clooney, actress, singer, White Christmas, married to Jose Ferrer, 5 children, and once was on the same bill as Michael Feinstein, where before the show they were both very nervous, and he expected that she would come up with some witty thing and put him at ease, and instead she said, "Don't think this ever gets any easier." Oops.
Yeah, I know. I think I might have shared this story last year, but when one of my brothers was attending a junior college in California, and he was part of a choral group, and she was doing an appearance, and all of a sudden she had no backup singers or no musicians. I can't remember exactly how the story goes, but she needed some help. And these musicians from Foothill College just jumped in at the 11th hour and provided her the help that she needed. She was so grateful that when she had the time, she came back and did a free concert, which I got to watch.
That's cool.
She was amazing.
She was a great singer.
Oh, she was fantastic.
Then we have Ryan Coogler, director, Black Panther. He grew up in Richmond, California.
Oh, wow.
Yep, just north of
San Francisco, Oakland, San Francisco area.
Yeah. Robert Moog, engineer, Moog synthesizer. And then we have Facebook friend Greg Spears, who wrote Fellow Travelers.
Oh, my goodness.
May 24th, Alfred Molina. And he was, Spider-Man, Doc Ock. Indiana Jones was his first role.
Yeah, just a tiny bit at the very beginning of the movie. Doesn't last long.
He said that he was forever grateful for that opportunity, and he loved working with Spielberg, and he made enough money that his wife was pregnant at the time that he got everything to furnish his nursery and clothes and everything for his new child.
I've heard interviews with him, and he is the nicest man you could possibly hope to meet. A total gentleman.
Yep. And then we have Roger Deakins, cinematographer, Blade Runner 2049, Skyfall. He only works with spherical lenses, not anamorphic lenses, because he says that anamorphic lenses are slow to process light and are prone to blemishes. Think of lens flares.
Interesting.
And loves still photography. John C. Reilly, actor. I'm going to wreck it!
Yeah.
In Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right.
Jim Broadbent, actor, Moulin Rouge, and he always plays characters that are somewhat over the top. And I was thinking of him the other day when we were watching Penny Dreadful, the second season of Penny Dreadful with
Mr. Lyle?
Mr. Lyle and his rather over-the-top characterization.
Yes.
And then we have Doug Jones, actor, Discovery, Pan's Labyrinth. Most of the time works under very heavy makeup.
He's the man is an amazing talent. I need to study more on him.
Yep, has double-jointed knees.
I'm not the least bit surprised. I know that Claire O'Reilly met him. Claire O'Leary. She met him in Ireland at a con, and such a sweetheart of a man.
Yep. And then we have Facebook friend Justin Cruz, and that's it for the birthdays this time.
Hi, this is Holly. You're tuned in to Krypton Radio. It's sci-fi for your Wi-Fi.
Go give a listen to all of our friends over at Krypton Radio, where you can find us on Tuesdays at 3 a.m. and 3 p.m. Pacific Time. Gene Turnbow is the station manager there, and he's really programmed a lot of really good stuff. So go give a listen to him.
I'm Daniel Radcliffe, and I believe that reaching out for help is the bravest thing a person can do. If you are struggling and need support, call the Trevor Lifeline at 1-866-488-7386. It's free and confidential, and trained counselors are there to listen 24/7 without judgment. To learn more about the Trevor Project's life-saving work for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or questioning young people, go to thetrevorproject.org.
This is our feedback section. We don't have... actually got a ton of feedback, but we're only going to give you a little bit, and these are some short bits here, so we should get through this pretty quickly, starting with regarding TG Geeks episode number 270. We got a comment from Arkle. He left this on our YouTube channel, and this is referencing the birthday segment, because I believe we talked about Mike Nesmith's mother in the birthday segment for that week, and he says, man, I think we did.
But I think we're George Harrison, I think it was.
Was it George Harrison?
Yeah.
Because I know that we talked about Mike Nesmith's mother recently. Maybe it was Harrison.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Maybe. I don't know.
Anyway, we were doing the birthday bit, and he says, man, now I'm sad, because I just realized we only have 2 each left of the Beatles, the Monkees, and the Traveling Wilburys. And he's right. And that, yeah, it makes me sad, too, because I grew up with the Beatles and the Monkees. So, yeah, I get what you're saying.
The Beatles.
Right.
The Monkees.
Yeah, and we're moving right along. Next comment was from the person we talked to a little bit earlier in the episode, J. Scott Coatsworth.
How about that?
It was his birthday, and he says, aw, you remembered. But where's my gift? Wink, wink, wink. We also got a comment from Tasca Lenz Hardison. She says, thanks, guys. And then this is regarding Holocaust Remembrance Day virtual national commemoration event. Got a comment from James Zycon. This is on one of the gay geek groups on Facebook. And he says, I'm an LGBT Jew to be by choice. So this is very much appreciated. Thank you. And I can't tell you, I'm so grateful that that press release that we ran was able to touch somebody.
Yeah,
that makes me so happy. And then, this is regarding Ben's gay book breakdown, Deadly Curiosities, The Amazing Paranormal World of Gail Z. Martin. Got a comment from Gail Martin herself on Twitter. She read the review. She says, I'm so glad you enjoyed the book. I really appreciate it. It was a very nice review. That matters so much. Well, thank you for writing such great stuff. And then we got a comment. This is regarding Meet Monia El-Yafi, publicist and champagne expert. We got a comment from, and we got this on Twitter, from ILDK Media, which is Mona's media group that she owns. She says, very honored to have this write-up. And then lastly, and we take a trip back through the Wayback Machine to episode 248, we got a comment from Scott J. Ramsey on YouTube. We interviewed him on that episode, and he said, it was such a pleasure being on this show. And that is our feedback.
Sherman set the Wayback Machine.
That's right.
For episode 248.
November of 2019.
Oh, my
I
Lord.
looked it up.
Wow. You can leave a comment on our Facebook page or our, where are we? Or tggeeks.com on any of the articles or the episodes that we publish there. We publish everything to Facebook, to Twitter, to Instagram. You can also comment in those different places. We also have a listener feedback line in case you want to leave us a voicemail, and then we'll play that on air and you can be famous like us. You can call 469-TGGeeks. That is 469-844-3357. And as always, please play nice. As everybody knows, we are huge supporters of independent creators, whether it's filmmakers, comic book artists, writers, or others, just like Scott, as we talked to him, and many others that we've talked to. During this great pause, it's as nice to support those independent creators. Go take a look at their websites, their Facebook pages, their Etsy's, and this and that and the other. And if you have the opportunity, buy something from them. Tell people about their stuff. Tell other people that you like their stuff, and maybe they can be interested too. So please support independent creators. The Joshua Tree Feeding Program is a 501c3 nonprofit food pantry for the HIV and AIDS community in Maricopa and Pinal counties. They are a place where clients can select from a wide variety of nutritional foods to take home. They set it up like a store so the clients can choose what they want and no food is wasted. They could certainly use your help right now during the great pause because different gifts are down. So as with everybody, please support the Joshua Tree Feeding Program through a single gift or a monthly recurring gift. Go to jtfp.org. If you are trans or are questioning your gender identity, and if you are in crisis or are feeling isolated and need someone to talk to, or you know of someone in a similar situation, there is a special hotline just for you. The hotline is provided by translifeline.org and staffed by trained counselors who are transgender themselves. The hotline in the U.S. is 877-565-8860. In Canada, it is 877-330-6366. Or you can go to translifeline.org to learn about the important work they are doing. Please reach out for help. You are not alone.
Yeah, baby. They're like two gay geeks. They're together, you know. They're two gay guys and they're geeks. Is that okay?
Well, we got time to talk about something that hit the news last Friday that got a lot of Star Trek fans so horribly excited.
Oh, my gosh.
This was exciting news. Star Trek Strange New Worlds.
And what is that all about?
Well, a lot of fans were terribly excited about the second season of Discovery when it reintroduced the characters of Spock, Captain Pike, and Number One off the Enterprise.
Yes.
And this is post-Menagerie. So it's that time after the two-part episode, after The Cage, but before Kirk takes over the Enterprise. And there's a lot of stories to be told there. Everybody loved the cast, especially Ensign Mount.
Yes.
As Pike. So they wanted more, and they've been screaming for more, and CBS made the announcement. It is official. There is going to be a Star Trek Strange New Worlds series coming to CBS Access. We just don't know when because they announced it, and we have to wait for the great pause to end. Yeah, and that's the great applause.
Yes, the great applause.
We have to wait for
This is the great applause.
That is the great applause, and that's what's deserving. I am so remarkably jazzed by this. And I know that I told you about it, and you kind of, you were kind of like, hey, this is good stuff.
This is good stuff.
I'm just curious, I kind of have some ideas on what I'd like for the show to do, but do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I just want to see more.
I'd like to see more, but I'm kind of hitting on something that Alec Peters, and we made reference to Axanar earlier during the birthday segment, and that's his baby. He said a lot of people are going to look at that as real Star Trek, and that kind of hit me with an idea. I wouldn't mind seeing something that's more old school in terms of the storytelling. I would like to go back to more of episodic stories. Something more of a procedural, less story arc driven.
Right.
That's just me. I mean, I would love that.
That would be fun.
I think that could be really enjoyable. I don't know what kind of epic stories they could tell. Although, Discovery wasn't bad this second season. It wasn't bad at all. They had some really good stuff there. Yep. But I'd like to see something that's really kind of single episode based again, just purely out of a sense of nostalgia.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm hoping. Yes, in a perfect world, that is what I'm hoping for. Yes, Star Trek, take me away. And while we're at it, I just want to add one last little thing, and that is, a year or so ago, we saw the documentary "Things We Left Behind," which was about Deep Space Nine, and you and I have been kind of mainlining through Deep Space Nine again. One of the nice things about having CBS All Access is that we can watch these things without commercials. It's fantastic, and I just want to say, I'm having the time of my life looking at Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
I am so enjoying it.
And watching Garrick just chew the scenery.
Garrick, he's got to be my favorite character these days. But I love the entire show. I love these stories, and seeing them again, we're about halfway through the third season now, and it's a clear reminder to me why this is regarded as probably the best of all the different series from the Star Trek franchise. So I just wanted to add that. But that's our second segment.
Yep.
And we got some things we want to run for. What am I saying? I'm trying to do two things at once. This is.
I was watching.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
I'm pressing like 14 buttons over there, trying to talk at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I was really
it's worse than me.
Yeah, I was going in several different directions simultaneously, so I didn't know what I was trying to do there. I was trying to reset a clock on my iPad here for the timer. Anyway, this is the time for our weekly review where we run down all the things we ran at our website at tggeeks.com. And I should also add that all the links for the episodes, for the feedback, oh my word, every feedback item will also be featured in the show notes for this episode at tggeeks.com. Didn't think I was going to get that out. Starting with Sunday, May 10th, Dr. Zombie, Monster Family Physician number 90.
Now, that one is just a one-off because he forgot to do a 90. So, actually, as of this episode, as of the listening of this, number 100 will be out.
That's right. And then on Monday, May 11th, TG Geeks episode 273. On Tuesday the 12th, Boys in the Wood on Amazon Prime Video, August 7th. On Wednesday the 13th, HBO announces top 25 semifinalists for the 2020 HBO Access Directing Fellowship. On Thursday the 14th, True TV expands on wildly successful franchise with Impractical Jokers Dinner Party. Oh, God help us. And then on Friday the 15th, new sushi number 100. Morsels of news from Japan and beyond. That is Hamish Downey. Good going, Hamish. And then on Saturday the 16th, Ben's Breakdown. Things We Dig is an amusing and bloody shocking vampire short.
It was great.
It was delightful.
Look for it at a film festival near you. And you can find all these things at tggeeks.com. And
I'm waiting for the sound bit.
Oh, there's a sound supposed to be there. Sorry. Got too busy looking at you pressing buttons.
And
got distracted.
I see. Anyway, yes, I have some shout-outs we need to make. First, to the Arkle Times Post-Dispatch News for publishing our content from time to time, put up by the human Arkle. You heard from him earlier. He is Brian Weber. You find the Post-Dispatch News by finding him on Twitter. Do that by searching for Arkle at ARKLE. And speaking of Arkle, he just kind of wrapped up Shameless Cash Grab Season 4. And that's on YouTube. And you can find that by going to youtube.com/Arkle Studios. And he's continuing to play the game Trick or Treat.
Trick and Treat.
Trick and Treat. I keep wanting to say that. I know.
I do too.
Shame on me. We must also give some shout outs to a couple of Facebook groups for allowing us to post our episodes and relevant articles on their pages. First, to Gay Geeks After Hours. Big thanks to the moderators for literally allowing us to share away our content. And their URL is facebook.com/groups/Gay Geeks After Hours. And then to The Gay Geek for allowing us to do the same. And the URL is facebook.com/groups/The Gay Geek. Again, all one word. Special thanks to their moderator, Jeremiah Reeves.
Thank you, Jeremiah. And lastly, and not leastly, you can find us on Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, as well as where other fine podcasts can be found. Also, check us out on Krypton Radio at 3 a.m. and 3 p.m. Pacific Time on Tuesdays, and listen to their other content, their 24-hour geeky internet radio station. Please rate us and review us on iTunes, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can actually listen to our podcast or webcast while you surf the internet on your device. Okay, that should do it for this episode of TG Geeks Webcast. Be sure to check out the article for this webcast episode. We'll have several links on the page that Ben told you about. And remember, you can comment. We can comment, yes.
Am I still distracting you?
We can comment if we want to. You can comment on
Podcasters Without Hats.
Exactly. Or our website, tggeeks.com, or you can leave us a voicemail at 469-TG-GEEKS. That is 469-844-3357. From TG Squared Studios, I am Keith Lane. Thanks for listening. Please be kind to yourself. Stay at home. Stay safe. Peace.
Cheers.